When I started Charity Water, 4,500 kids were dying every day under the age of 5. So I'm sure there's some parents. You've got little kids.
I've got my 2 little boys, and just like thinking of them like that.
They would die of diarrhea because the dirty water would give them diarrhea. And how do you cure diarrhea? Hydration. So we would go down to the Duane Reade and we would buy the purple stuff, right? Like the hydration, like Pedialyte.
What's the Duane
right?
Reade? I've never heard of that.
Oh, it's a New York thing. Walgreens.
Oh, it's Walgreens in New York. Okay.
Walgreens in New York. Duane Reade.
Like who's Dwayne? I don't know. The Rock? Is that The
Rock? So we would hydrate our child to health.
Yeah.
And this is the killer, because if it's the same dirty water that made them sick with diarrhea, and that's all that you can give them, they die of dehydration. The child doesn't have enough liquid in their body to live. And it's the kids that are under 5. Once you get past 5, 6, you become less vulnerable. Then you're just sick your whole life with dirty water. So we'll talk to adults. 4 months of the year, they've got parasites. They're missing work. They're in serious gut pain. It's the dirty water is not killing the adults. It is killing the kids. But you just imagine that, it's like jumbo jets, like 10 huge A380s just crashing every day, full of little kids under 5. And that's the scale of the problem.
Yeah. What's crazy to me is like you hear all these big numbers and they don't like the numbers don't impact me as much as like hearing the story like you told of that 13-year-old girl, or like hearing the story of like you talked about in your documentary with the guy who had the tumor so big he was about to not be able to breathe. And it's crazy because like I think we throw out all these big numbers and people are like, oh, it's just a number. But then when you like really think about these individuals, these children, these young girls who are like being raped on their way to go get water for the family because they don't have clean water in their village, I think that's where it really strikes me. And I think about my kids, I think about my wife, I think about like people close to me, and that's just something we never even have to deal with here, Yeah.
Well, I actually wanted to speak to that. You asked the question earlier, how has this work affected us as parents now that we're parents? And I think every parent knows the feeling of like, you put your kids to sleep and you can just never imagine something happening to them, right? Like it would break your heart. It would flip your world upside down if, God forbid, you lost one of your kids. And here in the US, I mean, we've all heard of stories, or we probably know someone who's lost a child, and we do big campaigns for their families, and we bring them food and we raise money for them, and it becomes this big story, right? And what we've seen in so many countries where we go is literally almost every mom you talk to in the most far-flung villages will be like, yeah, I lost 2-3 babies. We met a woman in Sudan named Aisa. She lost how many? 8 children.
8 babies?
And she thinks most of it was because of the water that they were drinking. They had this horrible water source. I think one of them fell down the well, and several of them basically just died from dehydration and diarrhea. And that's what happens when a child is drinking, taking in so many parasites. Mm-hmm. And what happens in these big open wells, which is what you see everywhere across Africa, is the rains come, they wash all the cow feces down into that well. And so, especially after rains, the water is so disgusting, but that's all you have. And so you're giving your kids this water. And yes, you can boil it, but sometimes you don't have time. Sometimes your baby will walk up to a bucket and just take a swig of the water because you can't watch everybody all the time, right? And so these women who casually will say, and not casually, but they don't talk about the grief. And it's like, I know as a mom that they have gone through immense grief, and there's no campaign coming for them. There's nobody raising money for her family that, after she's lost her 6-month-old and watched the baby literally take his last breath because it doesn't have any nutrients in his body. And that's what I've learned a lot from having kids, myself, is like, we tend to, I think, sometimes look at global poverty with statistics. Like you said, it's numbers and statistics. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can even almost imagine like, well, people don't feel it as much because they're so used to death there. But every single mom feels the loss of every single baby the same, no matter where you live on this planet. And that is, that breaks my heart. And that makes us want to work forever to solve this problem.